My name is not Zen, but that's what you can call me. Everything I'm about to tell you is completely true. I believe I was born in the early 90s. Believe is the right word in this scenario because my otherwise superb memory, in fact it was once flawless, only begins in 1997. Judging by the status of my body's growth and the growth of the children around me in those fledgling memories, I am quite confident that we were all between the ages of 5 and 7. How they managed to erase our earlier memories, I do not know. Although I suspect they used the same method they used to control every other aspect of our lives. Drugs. They gave us pills to put us asleep and gassed us awake. Our food was coated with chemicals that would regulate our appetite to keep our weight ideal. None of these treatments had negative side effects. They performed their duty with surgical precision. None of the treatments, that is, with one exception. Most of our medication were geared towards keeping us in perfect physical condition to survive the main treatment we had all been brought here to receive. The other drug was designed to maximize the mind's potential. It achieved that goal, in that we were all geniuses with IQ levels well above any publicly released. Yet as I mentioned before, there were side effects. During the first 16 years of my conscious life, I was telepathically connected to 23 other children, 12 females and 11 males. We shared every thought, every impulse. Often I saw through another's eyes, heard through another's ears, sometimes they through mine. This total lack of privacy would certainly upset any average person, but to us, who knew nothing else, the telepathic link was not an issue. It was a side effect of the treatment that made our lives hell. The treatment fused all our minds into one chaotic super being, but we did not really control it. Instead, the group mind had its own desires and used our bodies to manifest these desires in the real world. It would assign us duties, often to be done collectively, but sometimes we worked on them as individuals, although access to the group mind was always there. The group mind's tasks were typically innocuous in nature, such as using our collective intelligence to calculate algorithms that would predict the economic future of China, or to design a superior jet fighter. Yet, at least once a day, without fail, the group mind would make us do things. I hesitate to describe them to you, but the truth must be known. Before I detail my crimes, let me preface by explaining that the strength of the emotions of the group mind felt are unlike those ever felt by solitary human minds. The desire to instantly gratify the group mind is overwhelming. While the qualia is impossible to describe with words, at best it can be compared to an intense heroin withdrawal. It is not possible to distract ourselves with happier thoughts, and one is unable to refrain from pacing our self-harm until one knows they will soon follow the group mind's desires. There are times what the group mind wanted disgusted and even horrified me, yet I could not avoid following its will. I have hunted, tortured, killed, and even eaten hundreds of animals in countless manners according to the group mind's commands. I have defecated and urinated on myself and others. I have mutilated myself and others. In 2000, the group mind presented us with something we had never seen before, a small child, probably around the age of 4. Our instructions were to rip off the child's extremities, starting with the ears. I hesitated, but the rush of queasiness that foretells a group mind's displeasure led me to quickly reach down and grab his left ear. As I did, a revolutionary idea struck me. Why did this child not run or fight? Why did he simply cower like a frightened animal? Unless, like an animal, he was not group-minded. He did not have 23 other connected to him, offering him advice from their places of relative safety. Quickly, the group mind told us to murder our child, although many of us were still attacking the children's extremities, as I knew from our telepathic bond. But I could not. I could think of nothing except the possibility that humans who were not group-minded existed. The backlash for thinking such a thought was immediate and painful. Yet even though the full body spasms that had me twitching on the floor, I could not stop thinking about it. Some people have no group mind. No group mind. I almost shouted it straight into the minds of the connected peers. They understood the implications as quickly as I did. There was a way to end our torture. We could live without the group mind. We decided to escape. We attacked our handlers and quickly left our rooms. As we exited the area, the only place any of us had ever known, we realized that we were being hunted by other groups of children, 23 sets of 24 to be exact. Though we had some distance on them, most of us were not fast enough to avoid them. I felt their pain as all 23 of my peers were caught and summarily executed. As I reached the door to the exit of the structure, which I realized was underground, I saw two signs with arrows, one pointing left and the other pointing right. The former read Structure 21 and the latter read Structure 23. In the shock of being disconnected from the group mind for the first time in my conscious life, and the rush of fleeing for my life, I did not comprehend what those signs meant. I do now. There are 24 structures, each with 24 sets of 24 children, with each group of 24 group-minded. I have no reason to believe that the complex I escaped from is the only such complex of structures. In fact, my analysis of the population trends leads me to the conclusion that the program is expanding to people of all ages. The program cannot be stopped. I did horrible things for the group mind, and so will you. The group mind plans to dominate us all, and in time it will. The group mind always gets what it wants, always. No one knows where it came from. No one knows why it showed up in our little town, of all places. The only thing we knew for sure was that it was bizarre. The statue appeared in the town square about 2 weeks ago. It sits in the middle of the section of grass, decorated with a handful of park benches that creates a cul-de-sac for the town's mayor's office, police station, and courthouse. At first, everyone thought it was something dropped off by the local artist trying to cause a stir and make a name for himself. He denied it, and didn't cause any fuss when crews loaded it into a truck and took it to the dump. When the statue returned to the exact same spot 2 days later, the people of the town thought maybe it was a prank by someone in the next town over. Two small towns only a few miles apart tend to have some pretty intense high school sports rivalries, and those tend to produce the weirdest and sometimes most elaborate pranks. No one from that town claimed responsibility either, and the statue was removed once again. The next day, the statue mysteriously appeared once more. I decided it was time to go take a look. There was a decent crowd surrounding the 8-foot-tall obelisk. There isn't much that goes on in a small southern town, and a mystery like this was bound to have everyone talking. The sculpture was shaped like a man. It stood upright and had 2 arms and 2 legs, no tail or horns or claws. The limbs were too long, and it had 6 long fingers on each hand. The head was smooth and bald with 1 large eye, a wide, bulbous nose, and a too long of a mouth. It was as strange could get. Some people thought it was funny, some thought it was creepy, but we all were unsettled by it. The monument drew a near constant crowd for a few days before people started disappearing. People go missing. Everyone understands that, despite how tragic it is. It is, however, highly unusual for 12 people to vanish without a trace in the span of a week from a town with less than 4,000 residents. The statue was put on the back burner by pretty much everyone while the gossip switched to the possibility of a serial killer or a human trafficker plaguing our little slice of utopia. Those that didn't forget the statue thought that it may be connected to the missing people, and they were written off as crazy. I think they're right, it's only a theory, and I could be wrong. I could be imagining it, but I swear the statue has moved. Not its place on the grass, I think it's changed positions. I've been out to see it almost every day, and I swear its mouth was closed tight and its arms straight on its sides. I could bet my life savings that when that thing first appeared, it didn't hold its head cocked ever so slightly to the left. I don't think anyone else notices the changes. I don't think people are done disappearing, and I don't think that statue is a statue. It was a hot summer afternoon. My friends and I decided to go to the river for a cool dip. A refreshing swim was a welcome break from the stifling heat. We packed a lunch, some drinks, and I brought my camera in case I saw something interesting to shoot for the art collage project I was working on. We rode to the jetty on our bikes, swam about for a few hours, then made our way back home by taking the cycle track route which ran alongside the river itself. Cycling along the pathway, I pointed out a red brick building to my friends, saying how many times I'd passed this place and often wondered what was inside. Curiosity getting the best of us, we clambered over the metal fence and forced open the door. It was a small, long-forgotten structure which had seen better days. The roof had partially caved in and the weeds and shrubbery had almost buried it entirely. The interior was gloomy, the evening light filtering through a murky, broken glass window. The floor was littered with empty beer bottles, cigarette butts, and the odd smell of dead rats. Against the far wall was a filthy-looking mattress, and the whole place stank of stale urine. My friend was pretty nervous and was eager to leave, but I wanted to see what was in the other rooms. Exploring further, I found a tiny room that was a toilet. The inside of the broken bowl was stuffed with moldy leaves and dirt, and nestled in the center of this were 3 little mummified bird skeletons. My friend said he was feeling unwell and went outside to wait for me. Next to the room with the mattress was another smaller space with a wooden table in the center. The light in here was a lot dimmer as the window had been blocked out with sheets of cardboard. On the table, a ragged tasseled red cloth was draped, and on this was a number of jars and bottles. Holding one, the containers up to the light of the other window, I see inside something fleshy, floating in cloudy liquid. All the other jars contained bone fragments, teeth. One was filled with ash. I don't know what was in the bottles, but they all had an unpleasant odor. This place both fascinated and unsettled me, but I couldn't stop myself from looking. I took several photographs of the bottles and jars and a few of the dead birds in the toilet bowl. As I was about to leave this place, my gaze was drawn to a little tin box by the mattress. Inside this box was old photographs. It was a boy on a swing, a bride and groom, a scruffy looking dog, an old woman on a bed that was either sleeping or dead. There was an old toy horse with legs broken off, a watch that had no longer worked. The dials had stopped at 12:12, and wrapped in a pink handkerchief was a set of yellow dentures. I made sure to put the box back exactly how I'd found it when I noticed the mattress. I hadn't seen it before, but there was definite outline of a body imprinted on it, a brown human-shaped stain. I took one last photo of the filthy mattress before leaving the grim hovel. My friend was anxiously waiting for me outside. Riding back home, all we talked about was the spooky abandoned place. The following day at college, I was in the photography department developing the pictures I had taken the previous day. I hung them up to dry and looked them over for improvements that might need applying to the contrast when I saw something that made my heart stop. In one picture I had taken of the bottles and jars, a dark figure could clearly be seen standing in the shadowy corner of the room. The long arms of the sinister character were pressed firmly by its sides, the hair a black tangled mess, and his toothless mouth hung wide open like a silent scream. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Dead white eyes. Do you know what cordyceps is? I didn't either until 20 minutes ago. It's a family of thousands of different types of fungus. It grows all around the world in various rainforests and jungles. The awful thing about them is they are parasitic. They grow in other animals. An ant happens to run into some spores, and then it starts to colonize his insides, starting with its brain. At some point, the ant starts to act visibly ill, standing in place and shivering or walking in circles. If a fellow colony member sees him in this condition, he'll be dragged to the border of the colony and exiled. And then when it's almost over, the ant weakly climbs as high as he can up the vines and locks his body in tight. Finally, he dies, and the fungus emerges from the back of his head, bursting forth like a long and foul fruit. After a short time, the little stalk spews forth its own spores, leaving the mummified and broken ant clinging to the stalk, his eye cavities filled with drying fungus. I mention this because last night, when I walked up to the roof of my apartment complex, I found my brother's body. He just got back from an 18-month tour into the Philippines and was already back for less than 3 days. This was the first I'd seen him. My parents called me up the day before yesterday to tell me that he was on his way up. They told me he'd stay in his room since he got home, and then suddenly got up and announced he was on his way to come see me. And they thought he was drunk, and I thought he'd never make it. He must have come straight up to the roof and died by the smell of it. I was just finishing a cigarette, all torn up with anxiety and head throbbing, and when the smoke from the cigarette vanished, I caught a whiff of rot on the hot wind. It took me just a few minutes before I found him, face down behind the vents and fans. A slimy gray column rose up obscenely from the base of his skull, and a frozen waterfall of roots and tendrils was dangling from his eye sockets and mouth. At the top of the stalk was a small arrangement of feathery wisp, a white powder drifting idly from its tips. The spores must have drifting over the north side of the building all day, my side of the building. I came down to my apartment to try to call up the police, and my headache was rising to a feverish throb. I got through the door, and the moment I reached for the phone, plane flared in my head so bad I almost passed out. I've since tried 3 times and I can never get my hand up on it. The same thing happens when I try to get up and leave the room. I feel spines of ice tunneling up into my skull and my limbs lock up and shudder. The ants in their last moments crawl as high up the vines as he can climb. This is so the spores will spread over more of the colony below. In the end, the parasites control the ants with an almost intelligent drive. God help me. The pain is almost blinding now, and a new thought has been rising up in my head like a record skipping up, up, up. It's joined by an image of my office tower. It's taller than my apartment, the tallest place I can think of, and although the bulge on my back of my neck is the size of a peach, the skin stretched shiny, and I'm dizzy and my eyes are cloudy, I think I can make it there, up. No, I'm sick. I need help. The building pulses again in my mind, the cold wind, the roof, and the sky. These images and concepts dull the pain momentarily as they pass through my mind. I think I can get there. Up, up. If you live in downtown Chicago, I would get the fuck out.